Madam Mayor, you are now live and recording, and you can begin whenever you wish. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Welcome, everyone. This is part 2 of our draft budget presentation. Before we formally begin, just to remind you, of course, the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the Township's YouTube channel. And I don't believe we have anybody joining us via Zoom, but you never know. Starting with the roll, we have Johnson.
Present.
Councillor Watt.
Present.
Councillor Ward.
Present.
Councillor Johnston.
Present.
And myself. And beside me on the bench, we have our clerk, Martina J. Cartwright. Good afternoon. CAO, Leonard Arthurs. Interim Treasurer, Paul Kramer. Fire Chief, Chuck Patterson. Manager of Recreation, Mike Mood. Planner, Christina Coulter. And Acting CBO, Don Hellman. Welcome, everyone. So with everyone in attendance, I'd like to call the meeting to order. As mentioned, this meeting is just to effectively receive the draft budget for 2023, or 2024 rather. This is the part 2, of course, continuation from our deliberations yesterday. Just a reminder to council, questions for clarification as to the projects of staff that they're requesting, so that you understand what is being proposed is certainly in order today. What we're not looking for is at this point position as to whether or not we support items. We can save that for our working session that we'll be having on November 14th at 10 o'clock. And on that, council, I would ask on behalf of staff that we look to have any questions to staff, ideally by November 7th, so next Tuesday, so that staff can have an opportunity to prepare the information and get it back to us in time for our November 14th meeting. Of course, the questions come up after the fact, then so be it, but that's what they're hoping for. And then those questions can be filtered through putting in through Gijo, I think is what we had suggested, and as well as Paul. So just kind of an understanding of what that process looks like after today. I'll remind you before we wrap up today as well. Moving on, the land acknowledgement, we respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Michi-Sagi Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing nothing, can I please get an adoption of the agenda? Councillor Report, seconded by Councillor Johnston, all in favor, and that motion carries. And now I will turn the meeting over to our interim treasurer. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, and to Madam Mayor. I'm gonna keep my talking pretty limited today, and I can get to hand it right over to our fire chief, Chuck Patterson. We will.
That was brief, right now.
Quick.
There's going in cold on that one.
There you go, ready. Okay, so just going over, I won't go through all the summary notes, but because I know we ran out of time yesterday, so I'll try to be a good steward of my time. But our mission really is, in a nutshell, is to be trusted, united, effective, and responsive. And how do we do that? We achieve this through training, education, teamwork, and professionalism, and that's kind of what we're all about. How we do that, and our primary goals for fire protection is provided through the established of our level of service that is passed by council through the establishing and regulating bylaw. Our next slide, please. So we do have 5 divisions within the fire department that I oversee. We have just about 65 firefighters, and we have about 13 vehicle apparatus, 3 boats, and 1 all-terrain vehicle that responds to the variety of emergencies in our township. Our 2023 accomplishments, next slide, please. So we did receive our new style of pumper in our fire station 2 in Douro. We think we have it right. It turned out pretty well. And this was a change that we did going to a 4-door part of the strategy that we talked about before was, just arriving with the right amount of people to do the job and, cutting our time down in order to effectively, take action instead of arriving on scene with less people and not equipped and taking that extra time when we get there because of the seating and the capacity and the station upgrades with the gear and the SCBA right in the pack. So that's helped us a lot. Plus we're finding with the increase of calls and we have to forecast these trucks for 20 years. We're running into some calls where we're out with a smaller pickup truck unit perhaps, and then we get a secondary call in. Sometimes we have to go back to the station to get the right truck. So this is kind of a one fit. We'll be able to do a lot more of those types of calls and not have to return to the station and get another vehicle if that's the case that happens. So we anticipate that we're running into that a little bit here. So with the 20-year plan, we expect that to happen more, and this will reduce those risks. We'll talk a little bit more about fire trucks on a couple more slides, which is challenging for us and for everybody requesting those type of vehicles. We are going through the process right now of our Master Fire Planning Community Risk Assessment RFP. We've been told our fire station 2 is on track for completion in 2023. It is very close, just some things to get finalized. If you're going by there right now, the stonework on the front is picking away and is almost done, but it's probably 2/3 of the way there. It's looking quite nice. Public Works is doing the parking lot, so that'll be a project that they're starting probably next week. So that'll be getting that graded up and ready potentially for pavement next year if you allow that to happen through the 2024 budget. But the grading and the gravel will get rid of the standing water and create the slope to the ditching that it should be. We have added 2 positive pressure fans that were missing. We only had 2 overall out of 5 stations, which we reduced to 4 some years ago. Now every station has one of these fans. The idea is to add 1 more next year to replace the gas fan. That's quite old, but it's still functioning. So that's a 2-year phase in. And the other thing is our paging program. So we're hoping that that'll be a 2024 project and that it'll be a shared service that we're using throughout the county with 7 municipal partners. So that's kind of in the final stages. We're just waiting for the last piece of paperwork on that and to bring that back. So hopefully that's gonna go forward. Our capital projects for next year. Next slide, please. So just talking about the parking lot at Station 2 in Douro, just again, that'll be dealt with for the grading this year, but to treat it would be next year's budget. So working with Jake, because he's a better expert on the cost of paving on that. So this is what he got for current pricing on the area that we need to do. So we're anticipating that will be in the ballpark. Item 2 is a Station 1 building review and drawing. So we took that number from last year. We put that in the budget last year. It got deferred pending what the results of the master fire plan and all that could come out of that. So I know our plan isn't done yet, but we've put it back in the budget just anticipation of we do need to do something there. We are getting kind of the cart before the horse type of scenario with our fire trucks that won't fit in fire station. We've done a good job with Station 5 and almost Station 2 being completed. Station 4 with the Public Works building, if that goes ahead, that'll solve those issues that we have at that station. So this is the last one that we kind of have to have adjusted to meet the needs of the future. The other one is our bunker gear. So this is just 2 sets of continuous gear. It's here just because it's really over the threshold of 5,000. So that's why you see it in capital, not in operating. So it's just 2 sets of continuous replacement of that gear as we need it. And we do have some sets, but not everybody fits in any other gear that we may have. So sometimes we have a couple surplus that doesn't fit the people that we currently have. We are coming up to those bigger replacement years in the future. We're coming around to the 10 years again when we started all this. So those will be some bigger numbers that will go back out to tender. I think we're in the like 25 sets a year for a few years, but that's not yet. Next slide, thermal imaging. So this is a 2-year project aimed at replacing, we have, again, similar to our fans, we have 2 thermal imaging cameras that have been at the 5 stations, which are now 4. And these units these were donated to us, and they're gone beyond the life expectancy that they have. There's no more support for batteries, chargers, anything like that. Some of the screens are getting a little bit difficult to read just because of the age. So again, it's a good tool to have for the firefighters, not only just for fires, for sides up and stuff like that, but also vehicle accidents, missing people ejected. You can see those heat instincts. So that'll it's important, I think, to have one at each station. So that would be 2 this year. Would keep for the stations that don't have any. Then the following year we'll replace the other 2 that are kind of getting out of service. The last one is the trailer boat. That's at station 5 right now. So that's one of our old steel boats that we have. The timing on this is kind of one that it fits a purpose, but it's probably not the best. It's not what you would really ideally want. So this is a good timing with the building department. So Don may speak to that more. But because of their septic reinspection program, we're trying to work together, allow them to use a small trade-in of value, and then they would use our existing boat, the steel boat, and we would replace that boat with another one that's a little bit more suited to for rescues and such. So it has access steps on the back, a flip down front for either bringing someone in off the water or on lands that you're accessing that doesn't have a dock, so you're not trying to get over the side of the boat. So there's a lot of little features that way. It has a steering wheel console in it, so a little bit for people that aren't boating every day, like our firefighters, just makes it a little bit easier for operation and the viewing and seeing of that. So that's what that is about. And then that gives the building department opportunity to get what they need to do with the existing fireboat. Where are we at? We at the last one with fire apparatus, or are we on to operating? What's your next slide look like?
So we did skip operating there, but maybe we'll jump to operating and we'll come back to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so some highlights on our operating. The wages and benefits, there's just an annual increase in there with the wages, and then there's also, we put in a wellness program that we haven't had previously, so that's new. It's for the volunteer firefighters. It's a rider that we're allowed to put on with our VFIS insurance. So part of that is $2 a month per firefighter, so it costs us around $1,600 a year for that policy. So it's a benefit for them as well as for their families, kind of like our EAP program that full-time have, but they don't have that as volunteers. So this gives them a caveat. It is done by Homewood through the VFIS rider. But also we have a PTSD policy that was legislated by Ministry of Labor. So that this would fit nicely in there. We did have a company that we're using before that's no longer in business. So we have a gap to fill. And this seemed to be the most appropriate gap or filler to use. And then it also provides them a good service. Statistically, the firefighters are a lot higher than any other group for that mental health issues that can arise from some of the things that we see. So I think it's an important piece to try to add. Building maintenance and repairs, you'll see a big reduction there. So that was really because of an internal operation where we moved the snow plowing in there. So that it's just a contracted price that we no longer pay. So that's where you see that reduction. The computer and software, it's a big percentage, but not a big number, but that's part of that inside contractor now that we have Mr. Garside as our IT. The contracted services is up 5.3% total, so this is a fire dispatch agreement that's renewed. It's a 5-year agreement that's coming back to council soon. It's being circulated and commented on now. We've had a few initial meetings, so this is really the city of Peterborough has kind of treated Peterborough County as a partner over the years, and they're trying to bridge that gap of what it's costing them to run dispatching service compared to what we're paying. So we're just closing that gap to what we started with. We're still paying less than other organizations that are using the same service. So that's that increase that you see there. Insurance, Paul spoke to that yesterday. That's just, I don't have a lot of control over that. That's just our piece of the pie, I guess. The tools and equipment, that's a big percentage, but again, not a huge number, but there is a number there. So part of that is for that one extra fan that we talked about that we did last year. We did 2. So this is part of that is the fan, and then our hand tools toolbox on each pump. It's really a collection of everybody's old stuff in a box. So we're just trying to get that updated and uniform and the same. Yeah.
Through Madam Mayor, the fan, is that for drying your clothes and stuff? Is that your bunker gear?
No, so yes, through the mayor to deputy, that's our for positive pressure fan. So ejecting smoke in a building or cooking incidents or fumes or CO or stuff like that.
Okay, thanks.
And our mutual aid agreements, the 82% there, so that's an anticipation with the changes that we did with our false alarm bylaw. So those are the numbers that would be reflected based on history of the revenue increase. Other than the last slide. Do you want to talk about operating first, or you want me to just finish and then ask questions, whatever you wish?
Finish up and then we can
Okay.
kind of ask questions for all of them, Chief. Thank you.
Okay, so this, I just wanted to bring this to your attention because, like I said, we just received a new fire truck this year. We did order that almost 2 years ago. And the price, went from just over 400,000 to 600,000 as a budgetary number. So when we look back at that, that's 10% compounded annually. So that's a significant increase. And just speaking with some, some of these topics come up at our rural suburban committee meetings and the challenges that we're facing and, the continuous of the rising of these types of prices. So there's different people, different organizations doing some different things about trying to reduce these prices. Some of them are investing instead of into their own reserves, they're awarding a tender and working with that company and basically putting the money from instead of their reserves into their hands to try to reduce their overhead and capital and trying to drive that price down. There's people that are breaking it apart and buying, purchasing. We do a lot of things through a tender to protect the organization in case someone goes out of business or, bad practices or any of those things. So all those things end up costing a little bit of money, but it's good insurance protection for us so we don't get into a mess. But I think there's opportunities that we need to look at, different strategies. We have a 2024 truck that's technically due, which we wouldn't get for 2 years if we ordered it today. And then we have another one in 2026. So there's opportunities to try to do multi-year, purchasing, and indications that we've had with, again, just preliminary conversations on the vendor that we've used that built the truck. They're indicating, you could probably save $60,000 a vehicle because they have to kind of lock into those prices. We wouldn't be getting the 2024 chassis, they would be the new ones coming. So it doesn't really fit within our purchasing policy as it is right now. But I think it's something that we just have to, try to figure out another way to try to save some money on some of these large purchases. So we would like to try to do that and then obviously bring that back for approval. But we would have to, even though there probably wouldn't be an expense in the 2024 budget, we would just have to get some type of commitment to go forward with those in order to, because we are 2 years out now. So it's a little bit different, and we never used to face this type of challenge. Sometimes we wouldn't get it in the year that we expected, but we would get it shortly after the calendar year, but we're not seeing that type of business happening anymore. So just wanted to plant that seed, you know, just knowing that we're gonna be working on different ways to try to bring that the best way forward. And some of this, you know, falls into what we talked a little bit about. You know, my one little risk about ordering my 2026 pumper is that, you know, I gotta make sure that I have a fire station that's gonna fit in too, right? So we gotta also think about all those pieces as we get there. But anyway, just wanted to talk a little bit about that strategy, see if you're open to different ideas. It's really about trying to save the money, but also making sure that we protect ourselves against getting a good product. So that's, I'm happy to answer any questions about that or anything else in the budget.
Thank you for that, Chief. Before I hand it over to Council Relations, thank you for your flexibility. I know you were on the agenda yesterday to make this presentation, but time ran short. So personally, I appreciate your availability and flexibility today for that. The fire apparatus replacement strategy, this doesn't seem to be an uncommon trend right now, not just with fire, but ambulances and, you know, very specialized apparatus. There's very few vendors who are in the space, it seems, and I think that we might need to look at some sort of longer term strategy around that, but those are just my thoughts. Any questions from council, Chief today? Mayor?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Thanks for your presentation, Chuck, and your work that you put into that. Just on the trailer boat, you say that like sharing that with the building department. So would that boat stay in the water for their use kind of on a regular basis then, and then you would have that for the fire department use as well? Is that kind of the plan?
Through Mayor Watson to the deputy, not quite. So the idea is that we have a current boat right now that's on a trailer. So we would replace that boat with another boat. That's what's in the budget. And then the building department would use our old boat to finish their 1 to 2 year project on the water. So that, because we talked about trying to share that, but we don't know when our pager is going to go off. We can't have them out on an inspection that's 20 minutes away from our closest dock. And so we didn't want to get into that sharing side of things, but we just felt that this was a good time. The boat it's been around a long time. We had originally 2 steel boats, and then one was replaced with the 2 pontoons in 2012. So this one has been around for a long time before that. We did upgrade the engine when we did the pontoon engine upgrade. We put the better engine on that boat, so it is reliable. But it just doesn't really do the best job for our needs, and eventually that would be an item that we need to replace. And this just seemed like the best timing with the building department needs as well. So.
Right. Okay, I got you now.
Okay.
You're actually going to keep the old boat for the. Sorry, I was misunderstanding what you meant by that, but okay. Thanks for clearing that up. Just another comment I have, or I can follow up with you, Chuck, is I agree with this equipment and stuff, and whatever I think whatever you got to do to make sure our needs are being met and meeting, you know, our deadlines and getting vehicles and trucks and I know we have an issue surrounding where we can put them vehicles if we get them and replaced until we get the new building. But I certainly would, I know I was speaking for myself, I would certainly support anything you need to do to try and lower our costs and hopefully get stuff in a timely manner that the equipment that we need, or the trucks and vehicles that we need.
Any other questions from council on this, Councilor Ward?
Mayor Watson, thank you as well, Chuck, for the presentation. Definitely in full support of the comments here on working to reduce costs on fire apparatus, just we need a bit better long-term strategy there. The one idea that popped into my mind is there any way that we could partner with other municipalities in Peterborough County so that not every municipality is out buying something every year, but the county of Peterborough is out buying instead? They would likely get potentially a bit more of a volume discount, let's say, because they're buying two instead of one on an annual basis. Just a thought that I wanted to throw out there.
Chief, did you want to respond?
Sure, through you, Mayor. Councilor Burber. Yeah, it's something that we have done, not with trucks, but other equipment. We've done that type of trying to piggyback our purchasing. We did that with our SCBA. It wasn't necessarily even a department in the county, but we were able to, I might get this wrong, but it might have been Winnipeg that we were actually able to piggyback on because of the vendors, the vendor. The apparatus, I mean, there's certainly opportunities that that come up. I know a couple municipalities that have gone in and ordered the same truck at the same time. So those are things that we can certainly look at. But sometimes it's a little bit, I know you think of fire department's a fire department, but we all have a lot of different needs. You know, there's fire routes versus no fire routes. And, you know, depends on how many stations you have that might change how your fleet will look compared to, you know, a 2-station department compared to a 5-station department. So, and it really to do with your, you know, how many volunteers that you have, how many are coming to the station. Like, there's a lot of variables that are involved there. So it's hard to make a cookie cutter truck across the board, but we certainly look at those opportunities when we can.
You know, Watson, I guess it's not even so much kind of that cookie cutter truck just because there's so much customization and that's why they're so expensive. But even just one central buyer, this is maybe something for Peterborough County Council is, can the county buy everything? I think maybe this is something to look at for not only fire services, but maybe some other areas too, just with increased costs in essentially everything. Instead of having 5 or 6 buyers in the county, let's just have one and try to squeeze all of these vendors. Even if it's only 5% cost across the county for big ticket items adds up incredibly quickly.
Just to clarify, Councilor River, what you say when the county can buy, you mean like basically facilitate the tendering process as one buyer, not actually paying for
Right.
a fire truck.
That's precisely.
Another, yeah.
The county is the buyer instead of, I don't know, let's say office chairs instead of, just as an example, instead of Douro-Dummer buying 10 office chairs, the county can buy 150 and negotiate a better price.
Right. And just, I don't know if Alana or Paul maybe want to comment on this. I know that there's a lot of already kind of back and forth around buying and of many of our supplies, but I don't know if there's been any talks with the county in trying to leverage this type of volume when it comes to apparatus or.
Through Mayor Watson, there was actually a discussion, it wasn't so much with the county, although it was more about purchasing through an organization and just the size of us. At this time I was in Catalan, again, none of us were large enough to do it. So there was talks with the county potentially doing that on our behalf. Vehicles, I think is tough. I think there are certain things that we try to tender together, probably more in the public works sector than anything else. But I don't know, specifically, we don't have conversations often at the CAO level. I'm not sure if Paul's had any conversations at the treasurer level on specific items like office chairs, but it's certainly something that we can inquire about. Thank you.
I see Paul, I see Martina, I know Councilor Watt had a question. I've got fire.
Did you ask this?
Yeah, just to remember, so we do partner with the county on a variety of purchases. Our paper contract is with the county, fuel, propane, heating oil. I think there's a few other supplies, and then of course our gravel and things like that, but there are already some like co-op purchases.
So we have Councilor Watt and then maybe Nelson.
Just a real quick one, actually, it's kind of a combo between fire and the building department. With the boats, just to cover our township, is everyone got a boat license that, like, you never know who's gonna be at the helm, stuff like that. If something happens, they don't have one, we're on the lock, so I just wanna make sure that both departments are up to date on everybody having a boating license. And I know it's a trivial thing, but it could get us in trouble.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councilor Watt, yes, not all of our firefighters have it, but our station 4 and 5 are the predominant ones that are gonna be using either of those two boats, so we help them work through and getting their boater's license, so we ensure that an operator is licensed. And there's a lot of, I won't get into the weeds on the commercial versus recreational and all that stuff, but we have, we're able to, our boats had to be registered as commercial vessels, which we redid that recently. But because of our nautical miles from a shoreline, we don't have to have the commercial type of licensing, so the pleasure craft license works for our application. I can't speak to the building.
I was going to say,
But if they're gonna take one over, that's something they'll have to look at too. So.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, anyone who operates our boat will be licensed, or operates the boat will be licensed. Currently, I think we do all have it, but we would make sure that that's the case and offer any additional training if they needed it.
Thanks, Madam.
Deputy Mayor Nelson?
Yeah, just, through you, Madam Mayor, just in kind of, Adam's kind of question there, we, just from previous, I know Public Works had always, we tendered with the county and piggybacked on a lot of them tenders, even for trucks. And what kind of come to light in the last number of years was when we were piggybacking on them tenders, the county or the purchasing agent at the time did not want to take on the liability at the county for our township tender. If that makes sense. And there could be some repercussions from coming back at that time. I'll let staff answer that later, or if they want to investigate later, but this, what happened was, they did not want to be on the hook liable for basically our piece of equipment through their tender. It should have, and that's why they wanted our own tender, but we could go with them on a tender, if that makes sense. Like we would go with them to tender, if they had a tender for a truck, we would include our tender with the truck, or they would help us put that together. But they did not want us so-called piggybacking, just strictly on their tender because of liability. So I hope that.
Tender as opposed to them as being the sole.
Correct, yes,
Here.
just.
Right.
That was some, things that happened there.
I think we are, so when we do those tenders, we're still doing it as a joint tender, or I know with gravel at one point in time, we use as a joint tender rather interesting. Any other questions? Councilor Johnston?
Yeah, sure. Chuck, thanks for the report. Question, before we talk about the budget here, I just want to know something on my own mind. On your scope of work, if you go to a call, a medical call, and you go there, and you've got an ambulance following up, and the ambulance is going to be coming for an hour, two, whatever, because there's more than that going on every day. What is are you able to move a person? Are you able to transport someone to the hospital?
Through your mayor, no, that's not,
You can't.
no.
So then you gotta stay with them for X. Like I listen to Toronto station, and every day they got a red phone call, which means there's no ambulance available on call.
Yeah.
And that goes on every day. And therefore, they're allowed up to 8 hours before they have to respond. So I know in the past we've had trouble with our ambulance too, because they, unloading, they gotta stay in the hospital. So they were short ambulance and then bring them to Lindsay or whatever. So I was just wondering if you were able to transport somebody.
Yeah, no, through the mayor, to Councilor Johnson, no, we're not able to transport. It's not part of what we can do.
Okay.
We're basically a stopgap as a first responder. We don't fall underneath the Ambulance Act, which includes transport. The good news for us, not necessarily for the ambulance service, but a lot of those types of calls that are significantly delayed, like 8 hours you mentioned, we wouldn't be tiered for a call like that because it's not typically not a life-threatening emergency. So we're mostly going to life-threatening emergencies. There's a tiered response criteria that boils down on what we go to and what doesn't. There is other criteria. If there's a delay longer than, let's say, 10 minutes, then we go to these other types of calls, but it still has to have some type of life-threatening nature to it. Yes, but we are facing, we had a call not very long ago where the ambulance was delayed coming from Kingston. So there's an example of some time that we were dispatched to, but we haven't been into the 8 hours of standby, that's for sure, but.
Okay, and as far as I see what you've asked for in your budget there, to me, they seem to be very reasonable items. Is this, the boat you're looking at, is that gonna be like a pontoon boat too? Is that? Like,
Through the mayor to Councilor Johnson, no, it's not a pontoon doesn't do very well as a response on a trailer just because of the nature of how it sits. So this is more of a V-hull, it's actually a polymer type of boat. So it's very, very buoyant. So it's good to hold firefighters and equipment. So it has a lot of weight rating on it. And it's the polymer filled with foam gives it that density to float. And then it also has the, I wouldn't want to say it's like, like the Titanic said, it's unsinkable, but it's virtually, it shouldn't sink on us. So it will take a bit of a beating if we have to get into areas that are a little bit sketchy.
thank you.
No further questions, Councillor Johnston? And the rest of council, anything else? I have a couple of quick questions, Chief. Noticing the, on the operating, the employee wages and benefits as a 6% increase. I believe it was just at last council or perhaps the one prior where we approved a backdated increase for volunteer firefighters. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of the math on this. Is it 6% on top of the 6% that we just approved? Or is this the 6% that we just approved that we pre-approved?
So the 6% that you just approved was for the 2023 budget. So this 6% isn't all just wages. It's volunteer wages, it's full-time wages, it's benefits, it's all the categories that are rolled up into that, as well as the $1,600 for the wellness program. So we anticipate the same increase in rate as because part of the resolution was whatever council and staff gets, the firefighters get. So I think that was a 4.3 or something, so that's built into this. But so the 6% isn't just a wage increase, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that. The other question I had, I think we've talked about this boat quite a bit, but just a clarification. So the used boat, the surplus boat for the fire department, will go over conceivably to building. Did I hear you say there would be some sort of interdepartmental transfer on on that purchase?
To you, Madam Mayor, I try and catch everything in the budget, and as Chuck was discussing the boat, it kind of reminded me that I think that was one of the things we missed putting in the building budget. So we will update the building budget accordingly. There will be an interdepartmental transfer. We budgeted at 5,000, which is kind of estimated to be the traded value, and so that is reflected in the purchase price on the fire side. It just wasn't reflected on the building side.
Okay, thank you. So you missed the boat on the boat. I know, and just like that, let's go with the job or something. I don't know, guys. The other last, the last piece, it's not in this budget, Chief, but you raised it, so I have to ask. The bumper gear, you had hinted that in the near future, we're going to be looking at some significant investment in bunker gear as the previous gear that was purchased is coming up on its end of life. And we're looking at, did you say roughly 25 sets a year over in the next couple? What's the timeline on that?
Yeah, I might have that here to give me 1 second, but yeah, it's They have a 10-year life expectancy is all they allow us to use them for. And I think, I want to say it's 2025 that cycle starts over. Just give me 1 second, I do have that here. Yeah, so 2015 was our big year of purchasing. So that would be a 2025. That cycle will start over. And I think the last tender that we did, we awarded it. And then we did an award with a two-year extension. So it was a 3-year commitment. I think the first 2 years were the large years and then it reduced.
Okay. So I understand the value of taking that all out to tender at once as opposed to, you know, incrementally changing that over. But I know historically, other departments have set aside replacement reserves for these. Have we done this with this year, knowing that it's coming up to end of life, or are we going to be looking at swallowing that bill in 2025 and subsequent years? Paul?
I think I can speak to historic first. I think historic, there was definitely an eye to the future. However, there was, on an annual basis, there was pretty much an in and out. And so we weren't necessarily funding anything in the future. It was a pretty level, you know, $1 million in, $1 million out for the current year purchases. And the way that the budget has been done the last couple of years was, let's fund what is in this year, and let's just clearly fund what is needed to be funded from the levy. Where we need to do some more work, and I think I touched on it yesterday in terms of additional work to come, is on the asset management piece, on the longer term, multi-year, you know, replacement strategy from a funding perspective, especially on the capital side. So it's to come. That's the long answer. The short answer is no, there has not been money put aside specifically for something like the bunker here that will have a larger need in 2025.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council before we move on? Councilor
Just
Johnson?
one question through the chair. Never asked this to anybody else, but will you be having a plus or minus when you're at the end of the year for your, I know we still got a couple of months left, but from your last year's budget? How do you stand on that?
Stay tuned. I think we're close.
I'm gonna say he answered your question, but he didn't answer your question, so.
I don't know if he's out Halloween or what are you doing? You have any calls for Halloween that night?
The pager was going off a few times, yes.
All right, well, let's move along then, hearing no other conversations on fire and emergency services. We can move on to, it looks like Parks and Recreation is next. Yeah.
Madam Mayor. Just kind of looking at the time that we have and knowing that we have a couple more departments left, I'm gonna try to make this go as quickly as we can. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'll give you a summary of the parks responsibilities. So we manage and maintain all parks, play structures, outdoor facilities, sports fields. We cut approximately over 40 acres of grass on a weekly basis and 5 kilometers of trails. We also manage and maintain the Douro and Warsaw community centers as well as the rec center. And we also action capital projects for all of our recreation facilities and parks. Next slide. Some of the notable accomplishments in 2023 is the South Park Rehabilitation Project. It commenced in the fall of 2022. and has been successfully completed now. We've also had a notable resurgence in rental activities, just kind of indicating that we are post-COVID now and getting back to some normal years and usage of our facilities and sports fields. We also acquired new mowers, a new mower and trailer to help us take all the municipal properties in-house for the grass cutting this year. And we maintain now up to about 45 different areas that we cut through each week and weeks. We also replanted 20 trees supported by the Ministry of Natural Resources Storm Grant. 5 of those trees were placed in Maryvale, 10 at the North Park, and another 5 at the South Park. Efforts were made significantly aimed at enhancing the infrastructure and facilities. So we did replace the back dam shelter roof. We did a new Olympia Bay door at the Douro Community Center. New installation of the water softener at the Warsaw Community Center. We also started segments of the Millennium Garden rehabilitation. We did the flower bed out front as well as pulled out the old flowers around the gazebo and replanted that with the new flowers and everything. We had the formulation of the new advertising and sponsorship policy along with the tailored packages that people can choose from. And we have the dedicated focus of the future of the community centers through our ad hoc committee and progressions. Next slide. So on the park side of things, we tried to keep everything in line with previous years. We feel like we're pretty comfortable with where a lot of our categories are. One of the increases though is due to the employees' wages and benefits. That's largely because of the cost of living and projected grid movements. The other part of the bigger increase is our contracted services. Typically, all of our playgrounds are required to have inspections by certified inspectors. We do our weekly and monthly checks on these parks, but currently none of our staff are actually certified in playground inspections. We are required to have a comprehensive inspection. So by doing increasing the contracted services, that'll enable us to have a third-party company come out and actually do the comprehensive inspection. It takes a lot of the liability off the staff, in which we don't have to be taking that training and be accountable for exactly that comprehensive inspection. So we'll be able to do that going forward with a third-party company, and then staff can continue their weekly and monthly logs, and we would be in compliance for the year. So that's the bigger increase there. And then we added some additional costs for utilities due to the fact that we created the new canteen and shelter at the South Park. So that's reflecting some additional hydro usage and other costs associated with that. So move to the next slide. So our proposed capital projects for the parks. Number one, we're looking for a water storage and UV because of us building the canteen there, and the well that we had for the washrooms and canteen, it wasn't producing as much water as we actually had hoped. So we wanted to use the year to monitor it to see if we did run into any issues. We were good all year until our busiest weekend of the year, which is the Douro doings. And unfortunately, 2 of the days, half the day we ran out of actual water for the washrooms, so we had to close down our washrooms. So we didn't really know if we were gonna quite run into these issues, but we did. So this is to help rectify that going forward, as well as UV treatment. Because it is a public access facility now, we're required to do water testing and provide UV water treatment to that as it's open to the public. So that's the additional on that building. Our second item is the ball diamond players benches. The north and south park benches, they are starting to show wear and tear. The boards will need to be replaced on them, and portions of like the actual support system are heaving out of the ground. That's really apparent at the South Park Diamond. And then at the Legion Diamond, there's actually currently no benches on one side, and the other side has just round posts with a wood top, and in which they are rotting away. So to replace that as well. Our other proposal is Legion ball diamond regrading. Currently, the ball diamond outfield, it does have a number of humps, bumps, dips. It's a cause for concern for our player or users of that field. They have the trip hazards, falling, hurting themselves, so we have the liability of maybe a lawsuit if potentially not corrected. And we did notice a significant decline in that ball field usage from last year, or from the previous year, which we had about 97 hours of that rented to only 17 hours, and I think largely is no one wants to play on the field. So that's to help rectify that. Next slide. Again, we were comfortable with where we are at with most of those our categories here. The only one that's increasing is the cost of living and projected grid movements here. And our insurance is going up. That's the other biggest ticket item there. And then we are projecting a little bit more of an increase in revenue based on our annual user fee bylaw increase of 3%. So it'll get reflected in that. The proposed capital projects for the Douro community center is compressor overhauls. That's both the 50 and 30 horsepower compressors. This is based on hours of usage. This is a requirement or a recommendation through simple refrigeration based on the actual hours of use that we have. I think since the last time we did a major overhaul, this one is only for the top ends. And we've, since our last overhaul, we've had approximately 4,500 hours put on these compressors. So this is just to keep the life and longevity of these units going. The second is our harvest room windows. Currently, we do have a couple of room, windows in that room that are leaking. Depending on the way the rain is actually hitting the facility, if we have a more driving wind, it actually can leak a considerable amount into our harvest room now, and is starting to wreck some of the drywall underneath it, and has leaked out onto our new tile floor. So this is to rectify those because they are starting to show their age. The energy audit part, I'm not going to touch too much about this. We do have another more information coming for this. We're going to have a special council meeting in regards to this and a presentation from Simple Refrigeration. So this is essentially the greenhouse gas reduction pathway feasibility study. So we're looking to add this into our facilities or into our capital projects. Because going forward, this is a good, a first step for us securing grants. A lot of, all these grants are coming out and there's a big push for us to reduce our carbon footprint in 2030 by 50%, and then in 80% by 2050. So there is grants coming out, but we need to have this study in place to be successful in the grant applications. So we'll have a lot more information on that coming forward. And then the last one is another set of hockey nets. A couple of years ago, or I guess last season in 2022, beginning of the season, we purchased 2 nets for each facility, both the Douro and Warsaw Community Center. That replaced our game nets. We do have a second set of nets that we use for practices. We do alternate them to prolong the life of them. Our practice ones are now ready to be replaced. And I think each time we do replace them, we project about 6 years, and we do halfway through, we do sand them down and repaint them to give them some extra life and fix them as needed, but they've also already been done. That's already been done once, so. Next slide. So we have the Warsaw Community Center. Again, our biggest increase here is our insurance plus the cost of living adjustment and projected rate of movements. Everything else we're relatively staying the same. We may have a little bit more room on the revenue side of things to offset some of that. But Paul and myself will review that a little further to see if there's additional savings. And then our proposed capital projects for the Warsaw Community Center. One is a roof repair. Currently, we do have a couple of leaks in the roofs, the facility's roof. One is above the stands. So in the winter months, we noticed in the spring, there was, when the ice was melting, it was dripping up top. So when it was still cold, it created some ice up there. Staff were good at keeping it clear and marking it off if it was hazardous. We did have somebody come out and look at it in the summer, and there was a significant cost. We feel like we can maintain the safety of our patrons from now, but we would like to add it into the next year's budget to rectify that issue. And partly, and that's due to a lot of just the age of the facility and some of the seams coming apart, so they would be pulling the seams apart and shrink, or like a heat shrink wrap kind of thing, all the joints. So that's to do that. Our second item is the compressor replacement. So in 2022, we put aside $20,000 for this into reserves. We're proposing the second $20,000 to be applied, and that will cover our full replacement of the last compressor at Warsaw. It's original there. So then our third item is another set of hockey nets for the Douro Community Center. They're all in need of replacement. So our practice nets will be replaced, and then the current game nets will become practice nets, and then the new version of nets will be kept for games. And again, with the energy audit stuff, this is the same as doing the feasibility study for Douro and Warsaw. Did I answer any questions?
Thank you for that, Mike. Council, over to you. Councillor Watt, Councillor Ward.
Through you, Madam Mayor, a few things here, right? I've heard numerous times, like, in the Warsaw region, I was glad to see it start to get used more and more the last little while here, so I get, because I've sat dormant quite a while, but a lot of people have spoken, where do they park? What does the township own? What does the Legion property own like that? They're not quite sure where to park, and I don't know, I've heard a couple times that the guy that owns it is going to say, hey, you know, you're on my property, kind of guess. So is there any way we could maybe sign that off somehow, put a little bit in the budget to identify what is township property over there for people to park? So that was number one. And I know this is another thing that's come up a few times with the security cameras. Few, over the last few years, their arenas around the whole county have been struggling with people breaking into cars and so on and so forth. So, some kind of a security camera system maybe that we could look at in the same this year, but something to put on the radar for very soon, because it seems to be getting more and more prevalent, people breaking into cars all over the place, like, you know, so something that we can kind of give people a little bit of ease of mind. I know the one lady down here, she lost a lot of stuff there a year or two ago, but actually my great niece, and yeah, $500 worth of gift cards and 4,500 in cash out of her car. That didn't get out very well, but anyway, and so that's the two things that I was kind of curious about. The Millennium Garden you spoke about, and I know when Donna was here, there was talk about, you know, trying to get it right back to the river because there's plaques on trees and so they identify. Is that something that's still ongoing that you have to do? And do you need funds in the budget to cover any work on that kind of like that? So it may be covered under one of the items here, but I just didn't know for sure. And my last one was your playground. Is that inspection every year that we have to get an outside inspection yearly? Okay.
So through Mayor Watson to Councillor Watt. Yeah, so the signs, we can definitely look into posting that. I know that we've talked to a number of the users that do use the Legion Bowl, then they are asked to park in the township municipal lot to avoid the parking on the street. Sean, I have talked to him on a number of occasions. He has been kind enough to allow people parking in the parking lot, as long as they don't block the trailer, and I've relayed that to the user groups that are there. It is one of those things, we can post some signage and reiterate that each year, and we could possibly maybe looking at our property lines, try to create some more parking in the future, but we need to look into that a little bit more.
I'm not even sure myself what's ours and what's his, so like, you know, it is a question that comes up quite often.
Yeah, no problem. And then as for security, if that's something a wish of council, we can definitely investigate the costs of providing some kind of systems and report back to you.
Councillor Ward.
Through you, Mayor Watson, twofold question here. Where are we at with the 2023 budget at this point? Are we looking to be over budget, under budget? And kind of to follow up with that, one capital project that has me pretty concerned are the harvest room windows. It's not a large item, it's only $3,500, and if poor windows are going to be creating additional problems, those are going to be even more expensive problems than $3,500 to fix next year. So if there's room in the budget, it would be great to see those windows replaced sooner rather than later, i.e. in the next few weeks before winter really hits.
Watson to Councillor Herbert. Yeah, we can, as for the actuals, it's tough to really see, but because there's different invoices coming out plus other equipment maintenance. But as we've been monitoring it, I feel very comfortable with where we're at in each department, in each category. I do know that there has been a couple increases, say in maintenance or repairs versus maintenance, but we've kept the maintenance side down a little bit where we can to reflect that. As for the Douro Community Center, we were above and beyond in our building repair repairs, and that's largely to do for the septic failure within which council did approve. We can look at, approve that transferring the reserves for that to fund that, so we can look into purchasing the windows sooner rather than later, to answer the question for that.
I made through Madam Mayor to Councilor Verboer. I'm wondering, I think this is the second time that it's come up today, just in terms of where we're at for actuals and how we're doing for this year's budget. So I'm thinking maybe in advance of the working session, I can put together, include some actuals in some of the tables, and that'll help answer some of those questions. And we'll do a bit of a review with the time that we do have, just to maybe add in some notes on that as well. Now, in terms of actuals versus budget, that is something, as we're developing these budgets, that is a lot of what we're looking at. We're lowering places where, one of the challenges is doing it 3/4 of the way through the year. There are things that we can't necessarily look. So a lot of times when we're developing this budget, we're looking at 2022 and 2021 and even 2020 in some cases to see the trend, see what's going on, see what's going into those accounts. However, if there's something major that's standing out for 2023, we are assessing that. But I think we can bring that together fairly easily for the working session, and that should answer some of those questions.
Mayor Watson, just to jump back on these windows again, having replaced 20 some odd windows in my house. If there was a little bit of extra money kicking around somewhere, whether it be reserves or in the operating budget or capital budget, $3,500 today versus $6,500 in the spring, I think is what we would be looking at. If like I've seen the windows in the harvest room, they're well past their life expectancy, and $3,500 today would be well worth the money spent versus drywall and probably some wood behind the drywall that will need to be replaced and damage to the floor, which has just been replaced. So if I honestly could, I would make a motion that we actually proceed with the window purchase today.
Through Madam Mayor, we could do pre-budget approval and fund it through the 2024 budget still, but we're just approving it, the expense to be spent now.
Councilor Johnston?
To the chair. On the windows, number one, it takes a while to get the windows. And number two, did you say you had extra money in your budget?
No, I know how much they cost.
The other thing, if the bat, I mean, a tube of caulk is $5. We'll get 10 tubes of caulk and now hold the old one for the winter, because the winter when we really need it.
It's more so the actual
The
seal.
glass,
Yeah,
on the,
in where they actually close.
when the two of them. Yeah, okay. But I'm just saying, if there is on their side leakage, we could quickly work on that.
Okay, so Councilor Report, it sounded like you were interested in putting a motion forward.
Correct. I would like to make a motion for pre-budget approval to order these windows. As Councilor Johnson pointed out, they do take some time to arrive, so the sooner we can get them ordered and installed, the better. So that's my motion.
Somebody interested in seconding it and that?
Yeah, I'll second
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
I'll just add before we call the vote, I mean, I appreciate the conversation that's happening around this, around the windows specifically. It's perhaps a little concerning that, if it is potentially as bad as it could be, why we're waiting until budget to have this conversation as opposed to something coming forward when, earlier in the season. I don't know how soon the issue is noted or whatever the case may be, but I know that historically all staff are generally good at bringing forward emergency repair items as they need to be repaired. So I don't know if this is an emergency repair, and I also recognize lead time on windows is pretty tricky these days. Before I call the vote, Mike, any comment on how urgent or emergent the repair is?
It just depends on the rain. So like if it's just a normal day rain, we have no leak. If it's a heavy driving rain that's forcing because of the south east wind, then that's when we we get a leak. So it's not like it's leaking daily, it's on those driving days, so that's why we're looking, and we just noticed some of the drywall with where the water had run down needing to be fixed, and we just wanted to address it as soon as we could. And that's more so been noticed in the last couple of months, that just to try to, like, the odd time it'd be water on the floor, and we didn't know where it was coming from. And that's, then after investigations, we noticed that it's coming through the actual seals, and we had somebody come in that said the windows need to be replaced.
Sure, and I appreciate that. Just one more question before I call Councillor Johnston with a question. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, is it within your current bandwidth to be able to move forward on something like this if we were to pre-approve it at this point in time?
Don't know that.
No, I don't mean from a budget standpoint. If we're pre-committing budget, I mean in terms of your ability to actually move forward with ordering the windows and move forward with the work. It sounds like you've already got a contract in there and sized it up already, it sounds like.
Yes, we do, and given the dollar value, I guess we could, we've seen how it's under $5,000, we can, if choose to go directly with that supplier or installer.
Councillor Johnson, sorry.
I just gonna make a comment quick to the chair there. I'm surprised to get that many windows into that kind of thing. I'm really surprised. I think you'll find it's gonna be more money than. Anyways, I just made that comment.
All right, let's discussion on the motion on the floor. All in favor? That motion carries. You've got your windows. Now let's talk about the rest of the budget. Any other questions of Mike on the budget, Councillor report?
Through you, Mayor Watson, since we're in repair mode here, the roof repair, what condition is the roof in and how urgent to the fix is that?
Again, it's just, it doesn't leak every day, but
It
it just depends on that rain, and we noticed it a little bit more so with a little bit of ice, so.
Through the chair, isn't that something we did fix before? Just in Warsaw, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought we did some work on that 2 years ago.
We have done, sorry, we have done some repair work.
Is it the same area?
This one is a new area.
Oh.
Yep, there is the one area that you're speaking of, it still does leak time, and I've tarred it a couple times. This is to help fix that need for both areas.
Councillor Watt?
That's through you, Madam Chair. So Mike, this is the main roof, right? But you said it was above the seating, stuff like that, where the main part is.
Yeah.
I think previous years, we've done a couple times the back where the dressing rooms and everything are, that's been a major leak problem altogether. I don't remember anything getting done on the main roof before, like not to my recollection, but that's also something probably that has to be done when it's nice weather, warm weather, to get all that sealing to seal up the property before it's put back down.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Any other questions of Mike, Councillor report?
Through Mayor Watson. I know that this next comment will sound very expensive, but I wasn't on previous council, and it sounds like we've repaired the roof an awful lot here. How much would a new roof cost? Because it seems like if we're just kind of hodgepodging repairs as we go along, and every year is 15 or 20 grand, could we price out what it would cost for a new roof and maybe set aside some money in reserves for a period of time to finance that? Usually I'm not the one who wants to spend money, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Councillor report.
You really eat too many of those sweets.
Have we entertained?
It's not April 1st either, so.
Have we entertained costing this?
No, we haven't. You know, Warsaw has actually been in general fairly good shape. Like the actual steel itself's condition has been good. It's just the joints and the seals that are starting to more so go. We can definitely look into it, but I suspect that you're looking at a good
A fortune.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
Yeah, a few $100,000. I would think. Sure.
Any other questions? So I've got a couple of questions, not surprisingly, and then I'm thinking that maybe we'll take a quick little 5-minute break and go into the other two presentations that we have in front of us. Mike, let me just find my notes, sorry. You mentioned, I just missed the numbers, going back to the parks section, the Legion Ball Diamond regrading. You mentioned what the usage was, how many hours is that, what was the usage on that last year?
Forgive me,
Oh,
I got sidetracked when I had to move, so. To Madam Mayor, so I have a summary based on 2022's usage for all of our locations, actually. We did have some COVID related stoppages, plus the chiller failure was an issue at this second half or the beginning of 2022. So that's why some of these numbers are drastic. But in 2023, we've seen at the Douro Community Center, and this includes all of our rentals. This is room rentals and everything, and this is hours of usage. We've seen an increase of 500 hours at the Douro Community Center.
Mike, I'm sorry, not to interrupt you, but I'm going to, I was just looking for the Legion Ball Diamond specifically, and I wonder if that information is something like that, whatever that usage report that is that you have could be circulated to all of council by our November 14th working session.
Sure.
Just to save in the essence of time and save you from having to echo it all, but just on the Legion Ball Diamond, what's the usage?
We had 97.5 hours in 2022. Last year, we only had 17.5 hours.
Okay, thank you.
A reduction of 80 hours on these.
Okay, thank you very much. The other question I had around hockey nets. How many, in the best of circumstances, how many nets in total would we have with both facilities combined? Like practice nets and game nets and world, how many nets are you operating with?
4 at each location.
4, so basically 2 sets at each location.
Yeah. We try to keep one set just for minor hockey games, so they last a lot longer. And then we keep the other ones for the men's leagues and practices, just so.
Okay, so roughly $10,000 in nets if a pair sets 2,500, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Are we replacing them on an annual basis, like flip-flopping them like basically every other year to do so? Like what's the typical replacement?
Prior to this, I think we've only ever replaced them a couple times.
Oh, okay.
So like they'll likely be 5 to 6 years before we replace another set again.
I understand.
And like I say, we typically halfway through, staff will sand the metal down and re-prime and paint the bars just to make them look nicer again. And we'll repair any holes or something as needed. But to restring it, that's where you get the real costs. So with 5 to 6 years per set of nets before they need to get restrung fully.
Sure.
The pads, wear out.
And just piggybacking on a comment that I think was Councilor Moore had made earlier on the previous presentation, does it make sense to try and leverage economies of scale on the hockey nets, right? Where, purchasing potentially 2 sets this year, I'm assuming they're standard in size, it's not necessarily fit specific to rinks or anything like that. Does it make sense to reach out to some of our neighbors and see if there's opportunities to get some savings if we're replacing in order for more than 2 nets at a time, kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. We do, we've had meetings, we restarted the Fourth Lakes Arena Managers Program, so we actually just had another meeting a week ago, and that is part of our talks of joint purchases. We do network and we do talk about upcoming projects, and then we're also looking at joint training efforts to do one central location on a training that we all need. So we are looking at all that stuff.
Great, thank you for that. Trustee Johnson.
So ask question about the nets, you gotta go on. The
Sorry.
nets. Are we able to restrict them? Are we able to restrict them? Like the shell, you're fine, there's nothing off the framework, right? And it's cleaned up.
Correct.
I mean, I used to do the lacrosse nets, and we used to restrict them. With that, like, you just buy the whole thing, you just have to tie the ends together, that's what we always did.
Through
Maybe
Mayor
some of
Watson, Councillor Johnson, we can, and we have in the past. I just have found that our staff time for it, because the suppliers that actually do this, they only charge an additional $300 to string it. It takes them 4 hours just to string one net, and that's them. We've taken a full day to string one net, and then after that, it has, we thought we had it really tight, and it just sags, and it doesn't look very good after in the past. So given the fact that staff, the additional staff time, it isn't really that much more to.
Okay, so you say you've done in the past, so my other question is, when we have lacrosse, do we have special lacrosse nets? Or we used to run the old nets?
We have lacrosse nets that were actually donated to us from the Peterborough Minor Lacrosse Association,
Okay, good.
because we don't have a lot of lacrosse.
Yeah, I know. First of the year. Okay, no, that's good, I just wanna make sure that we're using at least if our nets and practice nets, if nothing else.
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Okay, folks, it's 25 after 3. Let's take a 5-minute back at 3:30 before we jump into planning and development for 2.6. Yes? Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Madam Mayor, we are back to our meeting, so whenever you wish, you can begin.
Okay, great, thank you, Madam Clerk. We are back, thank you for that break. So we are now moving on into day 2 of our budget discussions, and we are on planning and development, I believe, now. Ms. Coulter, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. I'll just wait for Martina to pull it up. So next slide, we'll start with the planning department responsibilities. So we're responsible for processing all Planning Act applications for which the township is the approval body. Those would include your minor variances, zoning bylaw amendments, and site plans. We also coordinate and conduct pre-consultation meetings for these applications with the applicants, agents, and municipal stakeholder groups. Excuse me. Our department also composes zoning bylaws, and we develop agreements, statutory notices, including notices of complete application and public meeting and notices of passing. We comment on planning applications for which the County of Peterborough is the approval body. And these include official plans, official plan amendments, plans of subdivision and condominium, and severance applications. We're also responsible for participating in pre-consultation meetings conducted by the County of Peterborough for those applications. We are responsible for preparing and providing reports and recommendations to council, committees, and senior staff on all planning applications, which include coordinating mandatory public meetings, ensuring the proposals adhere to provincial policy, the Planning Act, the official plan, and township zoning bylaws, as well as compiling, interpreting, and implementing responses from various agencies and disciplines like engineering, ecology, biology, hydrogeology, and archaeology. We manage the financial transactions related to all the planning applications, and that would include application fees, development deposits, development agreements, and peer reviews. We monitor provincial policy and conduct long-term analysis for changes that may affect the township, and we provide recommendations regarding strategic projects. We're the first point of contact for the public and stakeholders regarding a wide range of planning and economic development matters, including guidance on navigating the planning process. And then finally, the department works towards mitigating potential appeals to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and we manage any appeals to that body. Next slide, please. So some of the accomplishments for the planning and development department include providing a pre-consultation process for development proposals. This is a time-consuming process, which may or may not result in a planning application, but it is well received, and it has been a good process for people providing applications. The complexity of planning applications in terms of policy compliance continues to increase, and with the approval of the new official plan and further changes to provincial legislation, there will be new policy impacts to development. We continue to work with the County of Peterborough towards provincial approval of the official plan, and that includes any possible modifications relating to changing legislation. We are continuing to improve customer service strategies in partnership with building services. We began implementation of the Cloud Permit Planning module for both the county and township Planning Act applications in 2022 and 2023. This year, council supported providing delegated authority to the planner to comment on severance applications, which has resulted in a streamlining of those applications. We've implemented some new Planning Act regulations as they relate to third-party appeal rights, public meeting requirements, and the revised Conservation Authority's mandate. One of our big projects for this year has been the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre, which commenced construction, and we look forward to working with that facility to introduce the zoning to include an educational component next year. We're currently processing 3 plans of subdivision, which will result in a total of 89 new residential lots in the township. And then finally, I had an opportunity to broaden my planning experiences and connections by participating in at the Canadian Institute of Planners Conference in Nova Scotia. Next slide. So just a few notes to highlight for council on the planning operating budget. I started with the township at the end of June last year, so this is my first full year through a planning budget. The first point to note is the employee wages and benefits. They have been increased to reflect cost of living adjustments, as well as adding a portion of the building and planning administrator salary. That was previously 100% allocated to building services, and now we're allocating 20% to the planning department. For advertising and special events, this increase is really just to ensure there's sufficient funds related to providing prescribed notices in the newspaper, particularly for township initiated zoning bylaw amendments, which we don't collect an application fee for those, but we're still required to post them in the newspaper. So we want to make sure we have enough funds to do that. In terms of contracted services, I'm looking to increase that portion to obtain some support for updates to the site plan control bylaw and development of a mandatory pre-consultation bylaw, and that's given recent changes to provincial legislation. Proposing to decrease professional development to reflect just some planned training and conferences for 2024. And then I think the last point is the planning application revenue has decreased to reflect the actual applications to date, but I just would say for council, there's no crystal ball to determine how many or what types of applications we will receive in any given year. So next slide. So for our capital projects, similar to last year, we're requesting 40,000 to allocate towards the new comprehensive zoning bylaw. That project is mandated through the Planning Act, and it requires that we update our zoning bylaw within 3 years after the new official plan has been passed. The total cost right now isn't known, but in reaching out to some municipalities adjacent to the township, we've got a total cost of upwards of 180,000. And it's not just for the development of the text of the bylaw, but that also includes the development of the associated maps and schedules. So we have placed 60,000 into reserves over the past 2 years. And with the 2024 contribution, we would have a total of 100,000 towards that project. And we would be expecting to tender for the project next fall, provided the official plan is approved, at which time we would then get a final cost and need to budget for any shortfalls in the 2025 budget. So that's it. If there's any questions from council.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clinton. Council? Councilor Lott?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just one quick one on here. $108,300, is that what we give Orca every year?
I'm going to pull that one over to Paul.
Through Madam Mayor, yes.
Not sure we get it, but anyway, okay, all right, go, that's fine.
Let me just elaborate on that question a little bit further. Is that historically what we give them every year in light of all of the changes to CAs and the services that they are providing for municipalities or mandated to provide for municipalities?
To you, Madam Mayor, I think I'd like to maybe take some time and get back to you on that, just if I'm gonna look historically. I know the number that I need to budget, but in terms of the services provided, I probably want to talk to some of my colleagues.
That's fair. Thank you. Any further questions, council? Wow, Christina, you're gonna get your first formal budget process, and it looks like you're getting off easy.
So far.
So far, fair enough. All right, well.
Thanks for your work on that and good job.
All right, moving on then to 2.7, which is building and bylaw services. Mr. Hellman, are you gonna be there or from the lectern?
Do you want me to? Yeah.
I think the sound is better when you're not talking. We did have anyone come in saying that the sound is better the last 2 days, so
Oh,
just Councilor Johnson. So we might move that like that.
sure. Over to you, John.
Okay, thank you very much. So, as you can see, and our treasurer and all involved have done a great job making the documents. I'll just run through and talk on some high level points. Just as we go through the summary, I'm sure you're all aware of what we do in the building department, but for anyone who's gonna watch this or just live stream, I'll just go through and identify some of the stuff that you already probably know. So we're responsible for the administration and enforcement of the Building Code Act and the regulations. We're also responsible for interpreting and enforcing multiple other township bylaws. So such bylaws are like property standards, the zoning bylaw, our yards bylaw, and then they run as wide or as broad as our noise, animal, pools, and hopefully soon our sign bylaw. So construction as defined in the Ontario or in the Building Code Act, and some of our other bylaws require us to issue permits for the work that the residents wish to complete. And that permitting process requires us to complete reviews of the associated plans for compliance with the building code, township bylaws, and any other applicable law. Once the permit's issued, then we conduct inspections to confirm the work's being done in accordance with the approved plans. We also another portion of our job is to conduct investigations pertaining to construction without a permit or when we receive a complaint for non-compliance with any of the other township bylaws. Additionally, we work in conjunction with the planning department to provide comments on proposed development activities and clarify the interpretation on relevant bylaws. So it gives an overview of kind of what we do. And if I could go to the next slide. For our accomplishments. So this year we introduced a comprehensive customer service policy, and we have continued to build upon that to offer an enhanced customer service experience. We continue to support other township departments when requested in completing their projects when they require assistance from us. Currently, we're overseeing the demolition project on the 5th line of Dummer. The tender closed yesterday, and we should be in a position to award the contract tomorrow. And then if I can, just looping back on one of the things that our department does, which is to interpret and enforce the zoning bylaw. When we work within the zoning bylaw and we consistently see residents having challenges either interpreting or complying with that bylaw in particular, we review, that triggers an internal review for us of that particular section. And so for this year, we've worked with the planning department, completed the internal review of that section of the bylaw that pertains to second dwelling units, and we did a revision on that. We've had that implemented for a few months now, and it's working as designed. We're extremely proud of the work that both departments have done on that. And we have triggered another internal review of another section of our zoning bylaw, and that we hope to bring forward soon. And again, just really trying to offer that clarity to the residents and help them through the process as we see them either get hung up on compliance or getting delays in the permitting process. And then lastly, we did see a rise in our permit volume again from 2022. We anticipate another busy year of inspections through 2024 to meet the increase of those permits that we've been issuing this year. So that's positive for us. And then what we do have here on that slide is some proposed changes that we have to our fees. So we did a review of our current fee structure. And as you can see on the slide, we'd like to introduce some new fees and increase our sewage system permit fees. But those proposed changes do require a public meeting. And so my report on the changes in the scheduling of the public meeting will happen at a later date. Next slide, please. There we just on the, yeah. Our operational budget, if we look at employees' wages and benefits, through our operational change, allocating some costs to appropriately to some other departments, and also a streamlined permitting process. We've been able to reduce department staffing needs by one inspector over the 2023 season. So that's good for us to get that cost down for our ratepayers. And then also, I would say most other things, we have some reductions in insurance, which we don't personally control. But one of maybe our larger increases that came on this as well is our training budget. It did appear that potentially we didn't, in the 2023 budget, didn't anticipate or didn't increase our training budget to allow with the additional staff increase that we had. At the same time, we are expected to see some significant changes to the code as we harmonize with the national building code. So I do think that this training budget more represents accurately what we'll need. And then as far as, and then our next slide, please, is capital projects. And one you're already quite aware of, and I'll touch on it a bit more. But really, it's the truck purchase, sorry, one more, I think. So we are asking again, the need for the additional vehicle is still present. This additional vehicle will allow multiple staff members to complete inspections at the same time. And we anticipate that this would increase, we anticipate an increase in inspection requests for the 2024 year, as well as us administering our septic reinspection program starting again in 2024. This additional vehicle will offer a greater level of customer service, and it does have some benefits to the other departments, namely vital on planning. And so if we can incorporating some of those departmental travel needs in our everyday travel, we believe that we can save the township and the ratepayers on their levy as we can complete some of the tasks while we're already out on the road with our second vehicle. And then the last one that's on there, or the one I want to touch on, is just the boat, because it's come up a couple of times. So our hope is to purchase the boat, the existing boat from the fire department, and then complete. So this year in our septic reinspection program, the majority of the properties that we have to attend are island properties. And we've worked out costing of trying to get a water taxi to do some of that. The challenges there would be not so much the driver, but them actually allocating a boat for us for the duration of the time that we need. It was kind of put to us that they'd have to buy another boat. So when we look at this and we balance with the needs of the fire department, where that boat's at its end of life for its cycle, we don't anticipate owning the boat long-term. So it's not something that we are concerned about. Once our work's done with the boat, we look to sell it. It is not something that we anticipate bringing on and doing our own normal building inspections, day-to-day building inspections that are on the islands. Contractors will still take us to the island. We feel that that's a better option at that time because it's so intermittent. But just with the heavy load that we're going to see in the septic reinspection program in this year, we believe that having that boat and the benefit that it offers to the fire department by purchasing it from them is again just something that we're happy to be a good partner in on that. I think that is everything that I have, unless there's questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hellman. Over to Councilor Johnston.
To the chair, the purchase of that vehicle, where does that vehicle stay? Stay with the person, or does it stay here?
The vehicle, another building department vehicle would just stay in the municipal parking lot. Not to get into the operational too much, but it's here for the summer, and then we keep it at Public Works in the winter just for plowing. But not for someone to.
And number two, don't pay too much for the boat.
I heard it's used, might.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Councilor Watt.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Septic tank reinspection, it's gonna fire up again in 2024. What do you say? How are we on that? Like, we're in the process, because I think it was spread out over 10 years.
10 years.
10 years?
We'd be taking on the third year at this time.
Okay.
It is something that we need to continue to do.
Oh, absolutely.
The cost to the ratepayer now is actually, I would say, a good deal for them if we look at when that budget was set on what the cost to have that inspection was done and probably where our departmental fees are currently with the way that inflation has gone. So again, they are reaping a benefit by having that locked in on a 10-year term. So that's good for them. You know, and then, yes, we start on year 3 and continue to progress through it.
And you just brought up the fee in that, because I know there was a little talk around back and forth about the fee being reduced, or maybe get it all together taken off, and we were just gonna do it, and I didn't know where that one was standing at the moment, but we are still.
My recommendation would be keep the fee the same. As I know, through some research, I can understand why we locked that fee in for 10 years, and I think that, again, currently the ratepayer sees a benefit of having that. Maybe on the 10th year, we can discuss another way to go about administering the fee, but for now, they'll get a good bang for their buck.
Sounds good. Oh, one more, if I may, through you, Madam Mayor. So with that, and I believe, when we took it over from the health unit, there was nothing pre-1976 for where they were, stuff like that, so, I know, first of all, well, we don't know where it is, it's gonna be the tier 2 for the fee right off the start, kind of like that, I'm not gonna, I don't know, I have no idea when mine was put, no idea. I know I just had the service and stuff like that, but I know exactly where it is, how to dig up the whole 9 yards, so that was a kind of a bone of contention with a few people, well, you know, just because there's no record pre-1976, I can still show you where it is, and I have it open up, ready to go, kind of like that, so that second tier, right off the kick of the can, if there was no paperwork saying where it was or what it was put in, is that still?
So through you, Madam Mayor, my apologies. I'd like to come back to that if I could, do a little more research on that. I would preliminarily would say that if they could identify their tank and the bed for us, we'd have no reason to increase the fee. I think that's really what we're trying to do is cover costs. And so if the homeowner is prepared to be a partner in that and have the tanks open and have the bed marked out that we're confident on where that is, then we definitely want to recognize their involvement in that and their ability to help us.
Okay, well, that's good.
If I may, just one more point, in case you all haven't heard, the Peterborough Public Health in 2024 will cease doing septics, and so that will be downloaded onto the municipality. So a benefit to us is we're well suited for it. We're already there, and it's just nice to know that it's not something that we'll have to catch up on. We already administered that aspect of it.
To the chair, just to refresh my memory, what happens, you go to we had a public meeting here, some years back, a lot of farmers said, you know, we got Joe Bo to do it, and he did it, and nothing about it. They said, well, you have your record of paying for it. No, you just pay cash. No. So what happens when they got no record of when it was installed or stuff like that? They still take it up and show you the heads and that on it, is, well, what was on there?
To you, Madam Mayor.
If there's no permit taken.
So if we are unable to locate a permit, we would still be doing the field inspection. So yes, if we can ascertain where the tank is, that it's in good working order, where the bed's located, there's a lot that we can see from a visual inspection of the bed without having to expose it. If there's concern, then the potential of exposing it to maybe do a little bit more investigation on that is something that we would look at, but I'm not as concerned on the record of a permit as much as just making sure that environment and public safety is protected. And if we can be satisfied with that, then the administration ends up locating the permit.
We had some good times when we had the public meeting. I remember I chaired the meeting, and one of the farmers got up, there's no damn way they're coming on my property. And they said, well, all we want to know is, you know, how long it's been in there for 40 years and it's working fine. And the guy said, oh, what's this meant? I said, you better sit down. They're telling us they're there 20 years or whatever it is. So don't tell us it's there for 40 years. Actually, they might be wanting to know your name. So I said, just sit down. Yeah, there's no doubt. Some of the farmers said, would cover going there.
And just to circle back on that, it's interesting how this has come back to with Peterborough Public Health now they've completely divested themselves or will be divesting themselves of that work, where when we took it on as a council, I want to say back in 2018-ish, 2019, it's a new thing, and we were, you know, it was a bit of a whole new, I think there's only one other municipality right now within the county that is doing it themselves. I believe that's North Florida. And now all of the others are scrambling, trying to get the in-house expertise and get the program in place. So we are certainly well poised, thanks to the previous work of council and staff to get us in a situation that we can move forward and do it well, I believe. Any other questions from council on this?
And it's just a curiosity question, how, in the inspections that have been done so far, have we found very many that had to have some work done on them?
For you, Madam Mayor, we have identified some systems that have, it's not a large number, and some of the systems, we do assess liability and risk. And so depending on the system and how it's functioning or the lack of functioning, there's some stuff that's been added to title, for instance, one in particular that when upgraded, like when the house either changes ownership or the person who's currently there leaves, but the risk was low. The system wasn't showing signs of failure, just wasn't up to the code provisions for the type of house that it was. And so we balance all of that and work with the homeowner to rectify the issue. And what we see is most homeowners want that. They want to fix the problem if it's there. So it's not as many failed septics as much as maybe some construction without permit, where they haven't allocated the right number of bedrooms for the septic size. So we just really work with them to get them into compliance, and most, like I say, voluntarily comply.
No, that's a good thing. I'm just curious whether we have run into very many. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Yes,
Thank
I
you.
would like to make a comment.
I've been very quiet today. Through you, Mayor Watson, just a couple of points and possibly the benefit of new council members and anybody who's watching. The septic reinspection program certainly went through some bumps when we were dealing with COVID, and there was, a lot of feedback that wasn't always positive. So we did look a while back at looking at that fee structure and what made sense. Coming out of that now, our chief building official will come back with a report based on how we're going to move forward with the septic reinspection program. We can certainly look at the fees, but essentially we do want cost recovery. So I think there was a time we talked about reducing the fees and how we might do that, but we can take a closer look. I think now coming out of COVID, I can get back to the original plan. The only other comment I want to make is on the boat. Those of you that were here will remember that the boat was actually approved, I believe it was 2022, although the purchase was never made. It was solely going to be with the building department at that time, partly for the inspection program, as well as doing the inspections and just building inspections. At the time, the CBO was also a volunteer firefighter, so it made sense that, there would be that accessibility. But I think now, as, we're moving forward and we look at the septic reinspection program, and the need for the boat will not remain, and being able to house that with fire is a much better approach moving forward. So I was pleased to see them work together to be able to come up with a different scenario. And I think the boat purchase that is being requested this year is actually slightly less than what was approved years ago.
Thank you for that. I have a question around the truck and the boat. They're kind of interconnected. First, Dawn, thank you for hearing our concerns last year about the truck. I know that this purchase was something that was on the list last year and deferred and carried over to this year. And I also recognize that this comes out of fees and doesn't actually hit the tax base itself. But a question around the truck, I see $55,000. I had a hard time wrapping my head around this because I haven't bought a truck recently, but $55,000 seems like a bargain compared to what's out there. So can you just speak to how that works? I think just so council and the public are aware of that. But then also my question back to you is, in light of that and how that works, is it a truck that we need? And if you say, yes, we need it to be able to tow the boat, or, we need that weight capacity or to access the roads, then sure, that makes sense. But literally, we just had a county council meeting earlier this morning and approved a pretty significant fleet replacement at the county. And they're looking at, do we need trucks? Could we go with lighter duty vehicles? Could we use vans? Could we use cars? Not just around the cost of acquisition, but also the cost of maintenance and fuel and what have you as well. So could you just speak to that a little bit and give us some peace of mind?
Absolutely, thank you. I did contact a dealer to get that budget number. We actually feel that that budget number is accurate, if not maybe a little on the higher side, but we've given them the specifications of our current vehicle, and that is what they've given us as where we should anticipate to be. And they think that that includes a potential price increase that's gonna happen just at the start of 2024. So depending on when we actually send out for tender on that, and that's why we increased that to we believe we've covered ourselves. In those conversations and through my research, I've talked about whether the truck is the right purchase for us and if we need it. Payload is not a massive issue for us. We would be looking to tow the boat with it, but that's still intermittent and it's not long-term, that 1 or 2 years within the septic re-inspection program. The one that has been brought up to me and that I agree with and is probably the most would be being able to switch between 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive versus an all-wheel drive. So the fuel efficiency and the maintenance and wear and tear on a vehicle that's all-wheel drive versus one that can be in 2-wheel drive argumentatively for 90% of the time you use it, and you're only using 4-wheel drive when you get into winter conditions. We do access a lot of private roads and job sites. We find ourselves kind of in where we need it frequently once we become off-road, but during our normal travel through the township, not so much. They also, the discussion that came through the dealership and through some of the other research was the trucks are built to a little bit heavier standard. And so as how we're using them, they said if we take something like a passenger car or an SUV, they're not built to the same, I don't want to say quality, but to get the same wear and tear out of it. So as we use that day in, day out, our tools go in, day out, you know, we're gonna probably see a higher level of wear and tear on that vehicle than we would on a truck. And with the truck, we are looking at what's called a work package. So again, vinyl floors, very minimal, there's no upgrades to it. And so it's easy to keep clean. The moisture that happens within the carpet and all that is eliminated. And so they do expect the longevity of that truck to extend past what we would see through an SUV or something. And that's why that we have identified the truck as the appropriate vehicle. The last portion of that is we do see some rebates as a government agency purchasing the vehicle, and those rebates are typically the deepest on half-ton pickup trucks. And so we've used all that information, and then that's why we've identified this as the appropriate vehicle. And yeah, that's what we're doing.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
No, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, 4-wheel drive, right?
The 3-wheeler, yes.
Yeah.
Great. Seeing no further questions from council, Mr. Holman, I thank you for your time. Where do we go from here, Mr. Treasurer?
Through you, Madam Mayor, again, want to thank all staff and thank all council for sitting here and listening and taking all this information in. I know it's a lot to take in. Hopefully been able to read it and now hear it and get the explanation in. And we look forward to your questions. And then we'll see you again in 2 weeks. But if there's any other questions, I don't know, I see a hand up. I don't know if that's a question or not, but yeah. Thank you again.
All right, so I've got Councilor Reward, Councilor Johnson, did you hand up? Councilor Reward first.
Through you, Mayor Watson, just checking through my emails and following up on one of the questions, I believe from Councilor Watt on Orca and fees that were being charged there. I double checked my emails related to Orca's budget, and they have indicated an increase of 3.2% to their operating budget, which I believe has probably been circulated again. And that's where I think we need to have a fulsome discussion with them in terms of their level of, their number of services or depth of services are decreasing thanks to some provincial legislation. And I'm kind of questioning why we're paying more money. So the number is accurate. That's the council.
I was gonna say,
and
so that number
is
is the number that is in the budget already with that 3.8% increase?
correct.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Councilor Johnston?
Yeah, maybe I would like you to, one more time, tell me the bottom line rate that we stand today for the increase on the taxes with what you proposed.
Martina, are you able to share your screen just so I can?
I just need to bring the presentation back up.
just while Martina does that, so, without the joint building levy or the capital levy related to the joint building, we are at 3.8% plus 3.6% for the joint levy, which brings us to a total of 7.4%.
Okay, we used to always go around the table. And if any of the councilors would be interested in stating what they feel would be a comfortable percentage, even though percentage maybe is not the right avenue to look at it, but anyway, if we did that, are we interested in doing something like that? Or we just let this flow the way it's going?
If I can add some context, I think the go around the table would be a good conversation during our working session on November 14th.
Okay.
You know, I think
Yep.
we I would hazard to guess, as individual councilors, don't know how each of perhaps proposed changes that we may want to make or consider making to the draft budget would actually impact the bottom line. I think that, and we've had these conversations in the past where in the future, it would be ideal if we could set something that staff are working towards before the draft budget, right? Like if there's a percentage or target increase that we're looking at. Because if we were to come in at this point, after staff have put months to pull this budget together and say our target is 2% or 8% or whatever that magic number is, it's a little like going back to the drawing board at this point to set it up like a percentage target. I think if we were to go through the workshop session on November 14th, kind of on a, I don't say line by line basis, but you know, kind of dig out where we feel that we could generate some savings or where we want to perhaps increase, if that's the will of council, then that would make sense.
Well, my only comment is that, we used to do that, and Darlene was here for years and done this stuff, and she would take it back. And surprisingly enough, she would meet with everybody and all the different departments, and they come back and she come back with something more realistic that we could live with. And so that was done before we kept going further on. I'm just thinking if we go further on without having an idea, then all of a sudden, if we're not satisfied where we are, where we're at, then I would presume someone would say to me, well, why didn't you say that before? That's the only reason I comment that way. Because I think that if we're not satisfied at where we're at, even though we're gonna go to the public and listen to them and one thing another, I think, you know, at the 11th hour now, you wanna change things. It puts a lot more pressure on Paul. Where did you go back on the departments again? That's all I have commented.
No, and that's fair, and I guess, my definition of the 11th hour is now kind of thing, right? Like we've already
Well,
almost
we're
passed
just
that
receiving.
point.
Well, we are, but we still had to receive it to see where we're at.
Yeah.
You know, assuming, I don't think the 11th hour is here yet, but once we go to the public and then wanna make a decision, I don't think we wanna make big changes at that point. I don't know,
Sure.
just a comment, the way I see it,
No, that's
we
fair.
used to do it.
Councilor Verboort, did you have your hand up, or you already, okay, it was Councilor Watt? and then
Just
Deputy Nelson,
please,
sorry.
through you, Madam Mayor. One quick question first, or right in the first. So when we go over this and we want to send in questions on by the 7th is what we're asking for. We send them to Gijo and you, okay, not the department heads, but I just want to clarify that to be absolutely sure. And then on the overall budget here, like, I guess our big kickaboo on this one is like almost half the increase is the new building, which we've already said, like, we need this new building, there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. Like, so we can't, there's nothing we can do with that part of that budget. I mean, that 3.6% is something that it's probably gonna change over a while, like you were saying, the costs are going up and things like that, so unless we can get some big money from the province and the feds. But yeah, there's half the budget right there, half the increase, so it's gonna be pretty tough to whittle down the other, like the other being at 3.8 isn't crazy. I mean, it'd be nice to see, we always want to see it best possible, but we don't want to put ourselves in bankruptcy. Anyway, that's just my comments, but yeah, the building is really driving that up, but we need it.
Deputy Nelson?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of comments. If I look at, I believe our inflation number was around 11%. Is that correct, Paul? Our number was somewhere around 11%.
Through Madam Mayor, on terms of the overall inflation, it was 3.8. And I don't have the non-residential construction price index in front of me, but that is typically higher than, and has been higher than that rate. And so I can get that number, but that is the number that, you know, when I kind of told the story of our capital increasing at a higher rate than operating, I think that does, you know, follow the reasoning of cost increases related to construction and then non-construction increases.
Right. So having said that, I see this budget as, I don't see any frivolous stuff in this budget whatsoever. It's stuff that we need to keep on going and have, well, to provide the services that the ratepayers expect from this township. I believe that no matter what, we have to stay with that. And in order to stick with asset management that staff has fully worked on to keep us where the government, where our provincial government is telling us that we gotta be, I think he's done a great job, staff, on coming back with a budget that 3.8%. Yeah, it's higher than what is normal, but take a look at the fuel and the insurance costs and just what's in this budget as far as stuff that is beyond our control. We have no control over that. And if I also want to tell you something on a personal note. If I look at my township, I built my house 38 years ago. 38 years ago, my taxes were $1,700 and change. So 38 years I've been living in the same place, and my taxes at this point are about $2,800. So basically about $1,000 over 38 years. And we need the services in this municipality, and I don't think anybody can complain. We are probably the lowest taxed township in the county. So for us to take a look at this budget and say we need 3.6 is for our new building and new facility that we need. I don't think anybody can fault us too badly about our tax rates and what they are. And if I look, I could not even go out and plow my road from my driveway to the Warsaw Road and back for what my taxes are, let alone all the other services I get. So I look at it in that aspect. I think we're getting a pretty good deal as a taxpayer. Just my comments.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Johnston, I think I had that.
Okay, we got it in there all the way through. You've got a set on the wages. Is that a cut and dry? How do we come up with that percentage? Is that something that's already been negotiated? Or is it something that you just put down there?
Through you, Mayor Watson, to Councillor Johnston. So the wages are, based on our grid. So the grid has been approved by council. So each position is within the grid. And then the increase in wages is based on the owner's index. So that is also been the way this municipality has managed annual increases for staff. So it is based on what the owner's increase is, which is obviously the pension company. So last year, our increase was actually 6%. This year, it's looking like it's going to be about 3.8. Again, that number could change a little bit from month to month, and the owner's index goes from November to November. So it gets increased based on that. Some positions may have grid movement, some may not, but it is all based within that grid, and then the increase is just based on the owner's index.
And just to clarify for a second, and the compensation policy is over a period of years, right? Like we I can't remember when we just approved the compensation
policy, but to align increases with OMERS was a decision that was in that policy, which comes up for renewal when?
As required. So through you, Mayor Watson, we did just revamp the compensation agreement. There is a component in there as well for grid movement, so staff do have to meet certain targets to even be considered for grid movement. Last year, because we had the 6% increase, I did not allow any grid movement at all. Nobody had a grid movement in the municipality, although some had been suggested they would by other managers. I said, we can't, we have 6%, so we're not increasing anybody. This year it will be a little more feasible. So for those that had achieved those points last year, we're looking at those to determine whether there's grid movement. The compensation agreement, it does speak to the OMERS index as well. Again, that was in place before I got here. I think lots of municipalities choose how they're going to manage it. I think the OMERS index is fair. There's times where you'll have that 0.9%, and then, there's times where it's higher, but it is certainly in line with what's happening in the environment. And the compensation agreement, although we don't have it set to come back in a specific timeline, I think we have it to be reviewed annually and reviewed by staff and bring back as required. We did try to tighten some of it up because there were some things in there with respect to LTE premiums and such that I felt needed to be cleaned up. So we did tighten that agreement up a little bit. I don't think that anybody is overcompensated. And we have also gone through the whole compensation review, which we had the assistance with SHRP. And I think we probably finished that just maybe as this council was coming in or just before this council came in to ensure that we were aligned with all the other municipalities across the county.
Martina, you might be able to answer this better. When did we come up with an agreement with this OMERS thing? When would that come into play? Because I don't remember that, I was around here a long time before, and we used to set the thing for a period of 3 years, when it was 3 years and 4 years. But I never ever had to have to stand behind an OMERS percentage. We did our own. So did that just come out at the last council?
Through you, Myra, we can just circle back while I look at that information. I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, it doesn't matter, but I mean, I'm just saying, it must have been the last term of council that went on.
Through you, Myra, it was definitely the last term of council. I
So
just
that
don't
they made
remember
that
what it
agreement.
is.
That we've got to stand by. Like, for instance, the last year, when we said last year's, and they got a 6% or better, whatever it was. And I asked a question, and they said, well, no, that was an agreement made, you can't touch it. I said, what? They said, yeah, they agreed to that. Good counsel. Anyways, so I didn't understand what this OMERS thing. Like, I thought we used to be dealing with a percentage or whatever we deal with, but you're saying that's in the agreement now.
Yeah, and sorry, before I go on here, Martina, I think Councillor Watt and I were on the compensation agreement review committee. We've had a couple of meetings and went through that process. And I'm trying to recall what year that was specifically. I'm going to say 2019 but yeah.
Set a rate every year for how much increase would be every year.
Right.
And staff come back with so we went back for a couple.
So that was negotiated and then came back to council at that point.
So you weren't looking at the OMERS thing at that point, you would just come up with a percentage or something, is that right?
No, the OMERS was, I'm gonna say put in place for the first time. Okay. Martina has the clarity on this, but we turn to you, thank you.
So through you, Madam Mayor, the moved using the OMERS index as the cost of living increase was implemented in 2019. It was used for both council and staff. And then our latest compensation agreement was done in 2022, and it's up for review September 1st, 2026.
Okay, well, I just wanted to ask a quick question to see if there was if we had any play on any movement there, but I guess obviously we don't with the agreement you got in place. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Report, and then Councillor Watt.
Through you, Mayor Watson, just a very quick question to staff. In terms of using the OMERS rates, is that pretty standard across municipalities throughout the province?
Through you, Mayor Watson, to council. I have not actually experienced it previous to being here. I have had lots of conversations with colleagues though, who think, you know, it's a fair way across the board. So I think there was lower increases that happened here where other municipalities were set at 3%, 3%. Where, you know, others were getting a low amount and all of a sudden we're getting 6 and they're still at 3. So I think it balances out in the end. But it's just a little bit more reflective of what's happening in the current environment. So I know there have been some municipalities that have actually moved to that, but it wasn't something that I had experienced. I don't know, Paul, if you had in your previous.
Through Madam Mayor, it's the first time I've seen it, but at a previous local area treasurers meeting, and all the treasurers within Peterborough County were there. We had a discussion around this, and there was I didn't do this analysis, so I can't speak fully to it, but I do know that when treasurers looked at using inflation or OMERS increases, and then the amount that had been agreed upon with the different unions or different organizations, over the longer term, they all kind of evened out. And so, you know, because the OMERS increase is tied to inflation, we're just in a high inflation period right now. You know, we did have multiple years of that being around, you know, under 2 and around 1%. And so in those years, the organizations that had an agreed upon 2.5% were getting increased further than what, you know, we were under the OMERS agreement. And so I think right now what we're seeing is we are in that high inflation period.
Councilwoman,
Mine's real quick.
go for it.
Are we still around 50,000 per percent? Is that?
Through Madam Mayor, it's gone up a little bit over the past years. You know, I think if I had that up, but it's just over 60,000.
Just over 60?
Any other questions or comments from council? Just a question in terms of next steps and where we go. I see in the draft budget document that there's also section 4 of the draft user fee schedule. In theory, is our staff also looking for, at the same time we're approving the budget, we're also approving the user fee schedule? And should we be flagging that with council to review any questions or concerns? Is this the only kick at the can, so to speak?
Through Madam Mayor, I probably should have, I meant to make a note of it actually at the end of the meeting because it was at the end of the presentation. In terms of user fees, I think it's something that over the past few years has been dealt with entirely separately from the budget. You know, in review of the process, it is really something that goes hand in hand. And so when we were reviewing our revenues and expected money that we're going to collect, I think it was prudent to actually be reviewing our user fees at the same time. So we did include our review. I wanted to focus on other things in these presentations. I think we can bring back some commentary and have some further discussion on the user fees at another time, whether that's at the working session or you know, if we want to focus on other stuff on that working session, maybe it's at a council meeting. But they are there. These are our proposed user fees. But maybe we just need to dedicate some other time to actually have a discussion around them.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I think this really kind of gives rise to a bigger conversation, not for this budget, but for future budgets and future planning. You know, there's a couple, and I know we're changing how we're budgeting, right? The landscape of our needs as a municipality is changing, purchasing is changing, and procurement is changing. But even little bits that's kind of today in conversation, you know, in one case we're kind of creating a reserves for hardware, computer hardware through IT, but we're not really creating reserves for bunker gear, you know, and what is our planning around that? And we're also talking now potentially around some multi-year budgeting as it relates to apparatus for fire department acquisition. And I understand that the purchasing, as I said, the landscape's got much more complex. As government sector buyers, we're looking for highly specialized equipment and highly specialized expertise to
to get the job done, right, outside of with their own staff and resources. And the other theme that I've noticed come up around opportunities for joint procurement, right? Everything from hockey nets to office chairs. And I think historically, as a municipality, we've looked at large scale purchases for joint procurement and to leverage those opportunities. But as that buying becomes much more difficult for all kinds of reasons, it seems that there's now more a propensity for doing that as well. So those are, and now we're like adding user fees. It makes sense, yes, to address user fees with the budgeting process, but I almost wonder if in the future we look at those user fees being addressed going into the budget process, so that council is approving a set of user fees for the coming year to make the draft budget process a little bit more seamless, and where the revenues are coming from for those particular lines, potentially for forecasting. Mostly just observations around maybe some financial policies or future planning that staff might want to look at to help bring it all in a little bit more cohesive way. I know there's so many moving parts, and it's not to negate the hard work that staff have done to bring us this document. We've come a long way in the last few years, and I applaud staff for that work. But just kind of some summary themes on questions, not so much about the dollars and cents of the budget, but our approach to budgeting in general. Councillor Johnson.
I got one more question. We used to always have what we put away for reserves. And I've seen there's one situation that said they would take $11,000 out of the reserve. I guess that's the other thing I'd like to know is that what do we have in reserve for all the different departments? Well, I guess really, I don't think it's in the departments, it's in what we have in reserve period. Because we used to always say we wanted to buy a truck, we take 100,000 out. And then next 2 years, we put in 50,000, 100,000, whatever. We keep putting it in, even though next year we didn't take anything out. So we always had X number of dollars in reserves. Is there much in there? Like, the thing is, sometimes when we felt that was over, the budget was a little too high, we went back and took some more out of reserves, even though maybe that's not a good thing to do, because you gotta put it back to keep going, we're looking for more. But on the other hand, sometimes there was money that we could take. Now, I know with the building we're gonna such thing as reserves probably, but the thing is, I just wonder where we stand on that, if we want to take anything out of that. I don't need to know that answer now, but I'm just saying.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I did touch on that kind of when I talked about next steps. I do want to do more work on some of the reserves and some of the reserve balances, and it's something I was hoping to get as part of this draft, and just kind of limited resources in a sense. So we're a small team trying to bring this all together. So it is something I'm hoping to get to you for the working session, from at least a reserve schedule and balances. And that is something, it is in the plans, it is in the works.
Yeah, because I know when I say that we take some out, there's other times, like I just said, we would say, we better put X number in. Now, we don't want to put it in because it's going to be more money there, but that we would have to make up. But I'm just saying that's what we used to do is, we're taking some out now, or we put some in, or we leave it alone. And just make a comment on it.
Thank you for that, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Watt?
Great, Madam Mayor. Well, and you touched on this yesterday, and I just needed to make it. The impact on the median property of 256,000, is that kind of a general for Douro-Dummer Township, or is that a bit low, or like what would be the median? Because I know we got some pretty high priced lake properties, but then we probably have other ones, and I know this is based on impact, not on what people are selling for these days. So is that 256 pretty close to average, for the approximately, $82 a year change, let's bump it to $100 because that's maybe gone up at $100 a year more per household, kind of like that. But that's based on, again, on their impact, which could change next year, who knows?
Through you, Madam Mayor, so it is based on the median, and I think I could go look back on the average. The average isn't too far off from the median.
Okay.
So it's, I'm not sure.
It's a generalization.
Yeah, it's a generalization for the middle, the median property within the township. There's some that would pay less and some that would pay more.
Okay. And my last question, and do we have many properties, and maybe this isn't even something I should be asking, but do we have many properties in the township now that are in arrears to any great extent, or there's it running pretty good for tax collection?
Yeah, I don't have, through you, Madam Mayor, I don't have the numbers in front of me in terms of our total arrears right now for the year. In terms of number of properties that are going, so when we look at the tax sale process, there is a registration process that starts a year in advance. And we do have a couple of properties that are starting to enter into that registration process. Does not mean that they will reach tax sale.
No.
And it doesn't seem like there's any more than usual. I think what is changing is the public interest in the properties that do make it to tax sale. That's the change that we have seen, is not necessarily the number of, but more the interest in the ones that actually do make it to tax sale. I think that's more reflective of the demand for land and,
And that took me back to my question to council there last time, whether we could, council, as the 5 councilors, so I could get a notice, okay, these properties going up for tax, and just a quick, dirty, done, so we have an idea that, hey, there is some that are in the situation. But my more is like, my question on how many are arrears, and I wasn't looking for an exact number, but I mean, if it's increasing dramatically and like that also affects us, because that's money we don't get to run the township, we still have to run the township, so we have to get them somewhere else to offset that till we do get that money, so. If it is increasing big time, that's something else we have to consider. That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson.
When they, through the chair, when they go up for sale like that, we're on one of the top of the list to get our money first. Am I right to say that? Yeah. Cause I just came from my house today that I'm gonna put a furnace in, and the people lost it to the bank, and another guy bought it and got no heat in there. Anyways, that's good, Okay, no, that's all.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, council. Good discussion, good conversation. And again, thanks to staff for your work. I know that for us, this is like the first and then you have all had your heads in this for many months leading up to this. So you're finally seeing the home stretch, but we appreciate your detail and attention as we've gone through this. So to reiterate next steps, I think we all know, please filter comments through staff, hopefully by November 7th, so that they can prepare something in time for November 14th. That's not saying that if something comes to mind after November 7th, they won't be able to be prepared, but to help staff move through everything as efficiently as possible. And then we are scheduled to meet again on November 14th at 10 o'clock. And that meeting, I believe, will be upstairs in the town hall, kind of a less formal workshop kind of environment, just so that you guys are aware.
More room for lunch.
I'm sorry?
More room to give us lunch.
More room for lunch. Perfect. So moving over back to the formal agenda, we just need a motion for the confirming bylaw. Councilor Watt, Councilor Deputy Mayor Nelson, all in favor, and that motion carries. And a motion for adjournment, Councilor Johnston, Councilor Report, all in favor, and that carries. Awesome. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great evening.